1900. At the turn of the century, Sri Aurobindo jotted down in his diary,
"The last century of the second millennium after Christ has begun. Of the 20 centuries, it seems the most full of incalculable possibilities and to open the widest door on destiny. The mind of humanity feels it is conscious of a voice, of a distant advancing ocean, and a sound as of the wings of a mighty archangel flying towards the world, but whether to empty the vials of the wrath of God or to declare a new gospel of peace upon earth and goodwill unto men is as yet dark to our understanding."
Indeed, the first 2 decades of the 20th century were to witness some great human adventures, many natural calamities, and the giant progress made by science. The solid Newtonian universe was shaken to its foundations by the theory of relativity and quantum physics, while the Chinese and Soviet revolutions and the First World War showed that the road to peace was still long. It is in 1900 that Sri Aurobindo made his first revolutionary move. He sent a young Bengali soldier of the Baroda army, Jatin Banerjee, as his lieutenant to Bengal. His mission was to secretly establish revolutionary propaganda and to recruit throughout Bengal for the preparation of an armed insurrection. Young men were to be trained in activities that would be helpful for military action, such as physical exercises, athletics, and drills of various kinds. As soon as the idea was sown, it attained rapid acceptance, and in no time, the few young men with revolutionary aims became many. Jatin, who was exceedingly energetic and capable, formed his first group in Calcutta. He also entered into relations with P. Mitter, Sarala Devi Chaudhurani, and other Bengali revolutionaries who had already started their work through the inspiration of a Japanese artist who was a friend of the Tagore family, Baron Okakura Kakuzo. In April 1901, Sri Aurobindo married Mrinalini Devi, the eldest daughter of Bhupal Chandra Bose, in Calcutta. Soon after his marriage, he returned to Baroda with his wife and his sister, Sarojini, via Deoghar and Nainital. One morning, a few months after his wedding, Sri Aurobindo's younger brother, Barin, arrived in Baroda. He soon became associated with his elder brother's revolutionary activities. After a few months, Sri Aurobindo sent him to Bengal to help Jatin Banerjee in organizing the revolutionary groups and rousing the youth of Bengal. Along with their physical training, the young men learned of the lives of Mazzini, Joan of Arc, and other revolutionaries. Above all, They drew inspiration from a study of the Gita, which imbued them with the spirit of selfless work and sacrifice for the country. The following year, Sri Aurobindo returned to Bengal to visit some of the revolutionary centers that were already organized. There, he found that the prevailing mood was apathy and despair. His experience on this visit persuaded him that the secret revolutionary action by itself was not likely to be effective unless it was supported by a wide public movement. The immediate need was to increase patriotic fervor and popularize the idea of independence as the aim of Indian politics. But to achieve this miracle, to arouse the passion of the people and awaken their imagination, Sri Aurobindo understood that only the highest ideals would work, always as high and wide and vast as possible. And this is how he taught his students at Baroda College. One of them, K.M. Munshi, the well-known novelist and politician, recalled many years later, "To the students of our college, Professor Ghosh was a figure enveloped in mystery. He was reputed to be a poet, a master of many languages, and in touch with Russian nihilists. Was he? Many stories of his doings were whispered from mouth to mouth, among the students almost with awe. Under his influence, we became ardent revolutionaries. We talked of Garibaldi and the French Revolution, and hoped to win India's freedom by a few £100 of gunpowder. I remember only one occasion when I directly talked to Professor Aravind Ghosh. How can nationalism be developed? I asked. He pointed to a wall map of India and said something to this effect.
Look at that map. Learn to find in it the portrait of Bharat Mata. The cities, mountains, rivers and forests are the materials which go to make up her body. The people inhabiting the country are the cells which go to make up her living tissues. Our literature is her memory and speech. The spirit of her culture is her soul. The happiness and freedom of her children is her salvation. Behold Bharat as a living mother. Meditate upon her and worship her in the ninefold way of bhakti.
In 1902, Sri Aurobindo met two great personalities who soon became close friends and played a major role in his revolutionary action and in the life of the nation. Bal Gangadhar Tilak, the renowned Marathi leader, and Margaret Noble, better known as Sister Nivedita. Tilak had appreciated Sri Aurobindo's lucid exposure of the mendicant policy of the Congress moderates in his New Lamps for Old articles. Sri Aurobindo soon built up a close relationship with him, and he became a member of a secret society Tilak started in Maharashtra. Sri Aurobindo took the oath of the society and was introduced to the Revolutionary Council in Bombay. holding in his hands an unsheathed sword and a copy of the Gita, Sri Aurobindo took this pledge.
As long as there is life in me, and as long as India is not liberated from her chains of subjection, I will carry on the revolution. If at any time I disclose a single word or a single event of the society or harm it in any way, it shall be at the cost of my own life.
Among the foreign friends of India who had a decisive hand in shaping India's freedom movement at this time was Sister Nivedita, Swami Vivekananda's spiritual daughter and foremost disciple. She was a child of the independence movement in her native country, Ireland. Sri Aurobindo recalled his first meeting with her in Baroda.
Khasi Rao and myself went to receive her at the station. I was very much enamored at that time of her book, Kali, the Mother, and I think we spoke of that. She had heard, she said, that I was a worshipper of force, by which she meant that I belonged to the secret revolutionary party like herself. She was open and frank and talked openly of her revolutionary plans to everybody. There was no concealment about her. Whenever she used to speak on revolution, it was her very soul, her true personality that came out.
In her lecture, Swami Vivekananda as a Patriot, Nivedita passionately declared, India must find herself in Asia, not in a shoddy Europe made in Germany. The future would not be like the past, she said. Yet, it could only be firmly established through a deep and living reverence for that past. Then, she quoted Vivekananda's great cry, "We are under a hypnotism. We think we are weak, and this makes us weak. Let us think ourselves strong, and we are invincible." Vivekananda passed away on the 4th of July, 1902. Sri Aurobindo never met him, but he admired Vivekananda's bold defense of India's soul. In 1903, the Maharaja requested Sri Aurobindo to come with him for a tour of Kashmir as his private secretary. It was there, in Srinagar, that Sri Aurobindo had his third spiritual experience, as unexpected and unbidden as the first two, but of a vital importance. While walking on the ridge of the Takht-e-Suleiman, the seat of Solomon, also called the Shankaracharya Hill, he got the realization of the vacant infinite.
One stands upon a mountain ridge and glimpses or mentally feels a wideness, a pervasiveness, a nameless vast in nature. Then, suddenly, there comes the touch, a revelation, a flooding. The mental loses itself in the spiritual. One bears the first invasion of the infinite.
When his friend, Keshav Ganesh Deshpande, advised him to practice yoga, Sri Aurobindo boldly refused.
My idea about yoga was that one had to retire into mountains and caves and give up everything. I was not prepared to do that, for I was interested in the work for the freedom of my country. A solitary salvation, leaving the world to its fate, was felt as almost distasteful.
In December 1904, Sri Aurobindo attended the Bombay Congress. In this session, he prevailed upon the leaders to fight for full independence and without any compromise. He was the first political leader, along with Tilak, to publicly criticize the Congress politics of endless compromise and useless petitions. He advocated a more radical approach: passive resistance, non-cooperation, and complete independence as the only ideal worthy of a self-respecting nation. This appeal for full political independence came more than 10 years before Gandhi came back from South Africa and entered the political scene. It is around this time that Sri Aurobindo realized that yoga could serve other purposes than escape from the world. While being an agnostic, he always thought that the great spiritual figures of the world could not have sought vainly after a chimera. If there was such a thing as spiritual power, why not use it for the freedom of the country? And he needed power to liberate India.
When I turned to the yoga and resolved to practice it and find out if my idea was right, I did it in this spirit and with this prayer to him: If thou art, then thou knowest my heart. Thou knowest that I do not ask for liberation. I do not ask for anything which others ask for. I ask only for strength to uplift this nation. I ask only to be allowed to live and work for this people whom I love. Then I began to practice pranayama at Khasi Rao's place in Baroda, at one time for 6 hours or more a day, drawing the breath into my head. Some remarkable results came with it. First, I felt a sort of electricity all around me. Secondly, there were some visions of a minor kind. Thirdly, I began to have a very rapid flow of poetry. With pranayama, I found that the mind began to work with great illumination and power.
As we will see, in the modern age of science, Sri Aurobindo pursued the spiritual life in the true scientific spirit, if by science is meant a sincere seeking for the truth through a method of scrupulous observation, experimentation, and experience. Indeed, what Sri Aurobindo discovered through his yogic discipline came just a few years after Einstein wrote his first theory of relativity, shaking to its foundations the solid Newtonian universe and our perceptions of matter and life. Matter is not what it seems to be, and life is a deeper mystery than what we imagined. A few months after Sri Aurobindo started his yogic discipline, he wrote a letter to his wife, Mrinalini, in which he clearly explained the radical changes occurring in his being.
My dearest Mrinalini, you must have realized by now that the person with whom your fate is linked is a very strange one. I don't have the same mental outlook, the same aim in life, the same field of action as most men have in modern time. With me, all is different, all is uncommon. I have 3 manias. One might call them madnesses. The first is that I firmly believe that the qualities, talent, higher education, learning, and wealth that God has given me all belong to Him, and I am entitled to use only so much of them as is necessary for the maintenance of the family, and whatever else is thought indispensable. And all that remains should be returned to God. If I used everything for myself, for my own pleasure and luxury, I should be a thief. The second mania is a recent possession. It is that by whatever means possible, I must see God face to face. If God exists, there must be some way or other of realizing His existence and meeting Him. However hard and rugged the way, I am resolved to tread it. The third mania is this. Others look upon their country as a mass of matter, comprising a number of fields, plains, forests, mountains, and rivers, and nothing more. I look upon it as my mother. I revere and adore her. Today, the whole country in its present plight is at my door, seeking for shelter and help. There are 300 million of my brethren in this land, of whom many are dying of starvation, and most, afflicted with sorrow and suffering, drag on a wretched, precarious existence. What does a son do when he sees a demon sitting upon his mother's chest and about to drink her lifeblood? Does he sit down to his meals with a quiet mind and enjoy himself in the company of his wife and children? Or does he run to the rescue of his mother? I know I have the strength to uplift this fallen race. It is not a physical strength. I'm not going to fight with a sword or a gun, but with the power of knowledge. The force of the Kshatriya, the warrior, is not the only force. There is also the force of the Brahmin, which is founded on knowledge.
This was Sri Aurobindo's mindset after practicing pranayam and various yogic exercises for a few months. An intense need for truth was now burning in his heart. But really, to see God face to face? For Sri Aurobindo, spiritual life was not a matter of religious belief or vague philosophical conception, but a matter of experience. This reminds us of Vivekananda, who, in his longing to know the truth, went to see many yogis and leaders of religious sects, always asking the same question: "Sir, have you seen God?" But not one could say that he had seen God. Where then should he go? Suddenly, he remembered Sri Ramakrishna, whom he had met for the first time at the house of a friend, and who had left a deep impression upon him. Immediately, he went to Dakshineshwar and asked Sri Ramakrishna the same question: "Sir, have you seen God?" But what was his surprise when the answer came with a smile on the Master's lips: "Yes, I see him just as I see you here, only in a much intenser sense. God can be realized. Yes, one can see and talk to him, as I am doing with you. But who cares to do so?" On the 20th of July, 1905, the Viceroy of India, Lord Curzon, announced the partition of Bengal. Immediately, it created an uproar all over India, and particularly in Bengal. Sri Aurobindo denounced the manipulation, which aimed at dividing the nation, and particularly dividing Hindus from Muslims.
This measure is no mere administrative proposal, but a blow straight at the heart of the nation.
Divide and conquer was indeed the policy of the British government, but this time the partition acted as a catalyst to unite people and triggered the first great awakening of the Indian masses. A people which had slumbered for more than a millennium suddenly awoke vigorously, full of life and energy, as though a master of hypnosis had laid his finger on India's eyes and cried, "Awake!" The whole country seemed to be bubbling and boiling. The hearts of Marathas, Punjabis, and Bengalis beat to the same rhythm. Sri Aurobindo understood that the nation was finally ready to change. The time had come for him to enter publicly into the struggle for India's freedom. From Baroda, he sent Lieutenant Madhav Rao Jadhav, a friend of his, to get military training in Europe, while Barin organized revolutionary activities in Maniktola Garden, a family property on the outskirts of Calcutta. One of these activities, apart from manufacturing bombs, was to procure and distribute guns, rifles, and pistols. Purchase, theft, and loot were the three methods of procurement. A little later, Sri Aurobindo went to Bengal and met Jatindranath Mukherjee, better known as Bhaga Jatin. He was called Bhaga, or Tiger Jatin, because to save the life of a young man, he had killed a tiger, armed only with a Darjeeling dagger. Bhaga Jatin was a redoubtable revolutionary who succeeded for many years in defying the military might of the British Raj. Finally, betrayed and besieged, he fell in 1915, fighting with 5 trusted comrades against a whole troop of soldiers. Sri Aurobindo once said,
He was a man who would belong to the front rank of humanity anywhere. Such beauty and strength together I haven't seen.
About the use of violence, Sri Aurobindo once explained,
If there is a truth in non-violence, there is a truth in destruction also. Peace is part of the highest ideal, but it must be spiritual, or at the very least, psychological in its basis. Without a change in human nature, it cannot come with any finality. If it is attempted on any other basis, it will fail, and even may leave things worse than before.
Sri Aurobindo believed that in a country as vast as India, with so few British soldiers, guerrilla warfare, accompanied by general resistance and revolt, might be enough to force the British out of India. There was also the possibility of a general revolt in the Indian army. But for him, guerrilla warfare was not enough. He considered the shaking off of the economic yoke and the development of Indian trade and industry as a necessary concomitant of the revolutionary endeavor. Both Tilak and Sri Aurobindo were in favor of boycott of British goods. Following the partition of Bengal, Sri Aurobindo wrote two pamphlets, No Compromise and Bhavani Mandir. Bhavani Mandir was more Barin's idea than his, and in all likelihood it was derived from Bankim Chandra Chatterjee's revolutionary novel, Anandamath, The Abbey of Bliss. Its central theme was based on a revolt of North Indian sannyasins against the British rule in 1763 and the following years, a revolt considered by some as the first war of independence. Warren Hastings, then the Governor-General of India, extolled their courage. These sannyasis appear so suddenly in towns or villages, he said, that one would think they had dropped from the blue. They are strong, brave, and energetic beyond belief. Bhavani Mandir was meant to train a band of men to free the country from foreign domination. The idea was to build a temple consecrated to Bhavani, the mother, where devotees were to receive both spiritual and political initiation for the deliverance of India. In Bhavani Mandir, Sri Aurobindo wrote,
But who is Bhavani, the mother, and why should we erect a temple to her? Bhavani is the infinite energy. In the unending revolutions of the world, as the wheel of the eternal turns mightily in its courses, the infinite energy which streams forth from the eternal and sets the wheel to work looms up in the vision of man in various aspects and infinite forms. Each aspect creates and marks an age. Sometimes she is love, sometimes she is knowledge, sometimes she is renunciation, Sometimes she is pity. This infinite energy is Bhavani. She also is Durga. She is Kali. She is Radha, the beloved. She is Lakshmi. She is our mother and the creatress of us all. In the present age, the mother is manifested as the mother of strength. She is pure Shakti. When, therefore, you ask, who is Bhavani the mother? She herself answers you, I am the infinite energy which streams forth from the eternal in the world and the eternal in yourselves. I am the mother of the universe, the mother of the worlds, and for you who are children of the sacred land, Arya Bhumi, made of her clay and reared by her sun and winds, I am Bhavani Bharati, mother of India.
The idea to build a temple was soon dropped, but something of the kind was later attempted by Baran in Manaktola Garden. Baran also traveled among the hills in Bengal, trying to find a suitable place for a temple, but he got sick and had to abandon his search and return to Baroda. There, a strange thing happened. While fighting a violent clinging fever, Baran was instantly cured through the yogic power of a Naga sannyasin named Mohan Puri. Sri Aurobindo witnessed this cure, and it confirmed his growing conviction in the power of yoga. He also received an inner message.
At that time, while we were planning to build a temple for political sannyasins, a spirit purporting to be that of Ramakrishna came and simply said, build a temple. We thought he meant that, but later I understood it as make a temple within. This gave me the final push to yoga. I thought, if there was such a more than human power, why not get it and use it for action?
And truly, it was time for action. For millions of Indians, the partition of Bengal was an unacceptable blow to the very soul of India and its ideal of unity. Suddenly, the unexpected happened. The inert mass of the Indian people awoke at the sound of a new mantra, Bande Mataram. Towards the end of 1905, Sri Aurobindo went again to Bengal to attend a conference at Barisal. There, he witnessed the electrifying effect of the cry, Bande Mataram, then resounding throughout the towns and villages of Bengal, the reviving mantra which was creating a new India. Sri Aurobindo wrote,
It was 32 years ago that Bankim wrote his great song and few listened. But in a sudden moment of awakening from long delusions, the people of Bengal looked around for the truth, and in a fated moment, somebody sang Bande Mataram. The mantra had been given, and in a single day, a whole people had been converted to the religion of patriotism. The mother had revealed herself.
Mataram, Vande Mataram, Vande Mataram, Vande Mataram, Vande Mataram. Kamalam, Amalam, Vatulam, Sujalam, Supalam, Madaram. Namami Kamalam, Amalam, Vatulam, Sujalam, Supalam, Madaram, Vande Mataram, Vande Mataram, Vande Mataram, Vande Mataram,
Soon after the Barisal Conference, which was declared illegal by the government and broken up by the police, Sri Aurobindo toured East Bengal along with the great orator Bipin Chandra Pal. In villages and towns, enormous meetings were held, in spite of the prohibition of the district magistrate. Referring to the uprising of that time, Sri Aurobindo said,
Take the Bengal movement. The whole country was awakened within a short time. People who were such cowards and trembled at the sight of a revolver were in a short period so much changed that the police officials used to say, "That insolent Barisal look." It was the soul of the race that awoke, throwing up very fine personalities. The leaders of the movement were either yogis or disciples of yogis. Men like Manoranjan Guha Thakurta, the disciple of Bejoy Goswami. Then there were others like Brahma Bandhav Upadhyay. The influence of Ramakrishna and Vivekananda worked from behind.
Two months before the Barisal Conference, Sri Aurobindo had agreed, at Baron's suggestion, to start a revolutionary newspaper, Yugantar. The paper preached open revolt against the British and the absolute boycott of their goods. It even carried a series of articles containing instructions for guerrilla warfare. Immediately, Yugantar gained an unequaled popularity. Even petty shopkeepers and tea stall owners read the paper and were fired with patriotism. In June, Sri Aurobindo returned to Baroda. But his days as a teacher were over. His real work was now in Bengal. Invited to take charge, of the newly founded Bengal National College in Calcutta, he took a 1-year leave of absence and left Baroda in July 1906. The day of his departure came at last, and it was extremely touching, recalled one of his students. In the evening, Arvind Babu, though he had a very busy time, called me in his room, and I sat by his side. With a caressing touch of his hand on my shoulder, he affectionately said to me,
"Well, Rajaram, we part after all. We part in body, but not in soul, which is omnipresent. I leave Baroda because supreme duty demands my presence elsewhere, and I cannot shirk."
The chapter of intensive secret revolutionary preparation was now closing, and a new chapter of public political action opened in the mosaic of India's destiny. With wind and the weather beating round me, up to the hill and the moorland I go. Who will come with me? Who will climb with me? Wade through the brook and tramp through the snow. Not in the petty circle of cities, cramped by your doors and your walls I dwell. Over me God is blue in the welkin, against me the wind and the storm rebel. I sport with solitude here in my regions of misadventure, have made me a friend who would live largely, who would live freely, here to the wind-swept uplands ascend. I am the Lord of tempest and mountain, I am the spirit of freedom and pride. Stark must he be, and a kinsman to danger, who shares my kingdom and walks at my side.